Okay, so we're here at page 5b, Hayom at base. And the Gemara was learning out that if a rule was established by the rabbi by taking a head count, and they did it for a reason, but they took a head count and they said, well, this thing is now prohibited, or whatever they said, and they took a vote and the people voted it in. Then the reason for their vote, the reason for this special rule no longer exists. It doesn't automatically go back, oh, it was only established for this reason. And now, since the reason is gone, it's back to the way it was before. We don't say that. You need another group of rabbis to come together and take a head count. And guess what? That head count needs to be at least to the amount that was before or greater. That's a separate issue. We're not really discussing that over here so much. But we're just saying, if you had a head count and the numbers and you brought through you passed a law, in order to negate that law, even if the reason for the law no longer exists, the law by itself does not disappear just because there's no more reason. You need to get a head count, and you need to specifically say, okay, this rule is over. And that's why the Gemara basically is saying that he holds that the rule that the rabbis made, that on Rosh Hashanah, about that it's really no longer one long day, since they haven't ruled, that's still intact. That is not taken away. And he brought various different proofs for that. As we learned before in the Gemara, just go back for a second. Rabbi Yosef said the egg would still be usur because you did not have another head count to allow it, and therefore it remains as it was before. So, and that was the discussion to find proofs that when something was prohibited, even though the reason no longer exists, you're still going to need another head count, another vote to allow it. So this is the final proof. So the Gemara says like this, Michdi, let's take a look, let's examine. Kesiv, it says in the Pasuk in Shmois Lamed Aleph, it says, over there it's talking about the time when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the mountain the first time. So Hashem told him that also the sheep and the cattle shall not pasture opposite the mountain, which means by the mountain. El Mula. Let's stop for a second. We know there were two luchos over there, just to put this verse in context. And the reason I'm elaborating is because Rashi will elaborate. Let's put the verse again. First, Hashem gave Moshe the first luchos, the first 40 days he went up on the mountains. And Moshe Rabbeinu then went, as he was coming down, the Jews made the golden calf, he broke the tablets. Then Hashem told him to carve out new tablets, He went up again a second time. This verse in Shmois Lamadalid is already in the portion of Kisisa where Hashem has already agreed for him to do the second tablets. And Hashem tells him over there that the sheep and the cattle, they should not pasture by that mountain. And what does it mean in the verse? It says, El Mul, opposite, Hahar. Why does it say Hahu? Opposite the mountain. They were talking, they knew the mountain. Why does the pasuk say here Hahu? And we learn from this, Hahu, that mountain, while it's that mountain, what was special about that mountain? Were people not allowed to be on the mountain, on Har Sinai? Are we allowed to go? Are we allowed to have the sheep and the cattle pasture by that mountain? Of course. The Sinai, the Mount Sinai, even if we can identify what the Mount Sinai is, which I guess it's a debate, it's a dispute, it's not clear. But even if we could identify it and we know what it is, there's certainly no prohibition. Didn't Hashem say, because the way we translate it is that while it is that mountain, while that mountain has the presence of the divine, that's when you can't have the sheep and the cattle pasture by that mountain. So what would that mean? That would mean that as soon as the divine is no longer there, so then they can go ahead and pasture there, right? That's what it says in the verse. But when you go back to the previous pasuk, when Hashem first tells them to go up, this is in Shmois Yutes Yud Gimel, we had before, over there it says, so this is in Kisiso, this pasuk, by the second luchas. But by the first luchas it says, B'mshoich hayovel, that when you hear the sound of the trumpet or the shofar loud, that it goes a long time. Rashi bring down two versions, either a long, a tekiya gedola, either it's a long, or it means, or he stops blowing. Either event, the Torah says at that point you can go up to the mountain. Now, why did the Torah have to say it by the first luchas that when the trumpet blows, you can go up to the mountain? Because we know for as long as the cloud is on the mountain, Amul Ahor Hahu, if it's still that mountain, it's Mount Sinai, which has the divine presence on the Mount Sinai, you can't go onto the mountain. Why do we need a special pasuk? Why did the Torah have to say that when the trumpet's going to be, you can go up? You don't need the trumpet to let you up. You can go up because the divine left. The whole reason is that you're there because there is the divine on the mountain. You have the cloud of glory. Hashem's honor is on the mountain. And that's why you can't go up. As soon as it's no longer there, then go up. Why do we need a pasuk to tell you, oh no, we're going to allow you to go up because the trumpet will blow or stop blowing? Shmamino. So we hear from this that since Hashem is the one that told them that they have to stay away, so here is using the language, something which they have counted on. They have put a vote. But of course, by Hashem, as the Rashi said before, that since Kuchabricha Asar, the Eibishter prohibited, he has to, just like by a count, you need a head count to permit it. Since Hashem prohibited, he has to allow it. So you can't just go up to the mountain because there's no longer the divine there. We need a Befersha pasuk. We need a clear pasuk. Let's do the Rashi. You'll see what Rashi explains over here. So from the fact that we needed Hashem to allow them to go up, that's how we know that if Hashem said don't go up, even though it's because the divine is there, even if the divine left, you still can't go up there until we got a clear instruction. Yes, you can go up. When it goes them. Now, the Rashi will point out that from the time of Matan Torah until they stayed, the cloud was constantly on the mountain. They weren't allowed to go up the mountain. So the B'mshach HaYovel, again, must have been after that. Let's look at the Rashi. Mirdi Ksiv. Let's see, Ksiv, what the Pasuk says. So this is Beluches HaAchronis. This Pasuk of Gam Hatzoin VaBokar, Al Yiru Al Mula Harahu. So it starts off with the Ish Lo Yale Imoch Goimer. Apparently Rashi had this girsa. Here by us it says straight Gam Hatzoin VaBokar. But Rashi has the beginning of the pasuk over there. It says V'ish lo yale imoch v'goymer. Or maybe not. I'm not sure if that's true, but that this was Rashi's gershon. But anyways, Rashi quotes the beginning of the pasuk over there. Nobody should go up with Moshe. And then it says also in the end of the pasuk, also the tzoin and the bakar, the sheep and the cattle, they should not pasture by that mountain. Zokt Rashi, Miseifa Dekro Yolif, that he learns from the end of the pasuk. Ishlo Yali Imach. And the pasuk says El Mul Hahor Hahu. The pasuk says El Mul Hahor Hahu. That's the quote that we have in our Gemara. So we learn from that pasuk, Kol Zman Shahu behaviyas kedushosei. Hahu means as long as the mountain is in its sanctity. So mul harahu, while the mountain shashchina olav, that the divine is on there, then it's osur, then it's prohibited. Avo nistalik shchina, but after the divine leaves, then it's mutter, then you're allowed. Because the Torah says mul haro. So no, Rashi says avon is tal shchina muter, but that the shchina moves is permissible. Memela shamina memela. We know that by itself, because the whole reason why you can't go up is because the shchina is there. So the shchina goes away. Why do we have to tell you that you can go up? Lo maleilat chureshar yuseh behedye. During the first luchas, he mentions it openly. He says, Ulameimer, he says over there, Nistalka Shchina, Hemo Yalu, Bahar, that once the Shchina leaves, Bimshoich HaYovel, Hemo Yalu Bahar, that once the Shchina lives, they can go up. And Rashi explains now, but maybe you're going to say that's talking about in between the first and the second luchas, because here maybe he was telling them they can go up after the first luchas, before the second luchas when he told them don't pasture. So he had to tell them by the first luchas. By the first luchas, we don't have the pasuk that tells us because of the kedusha. So maybe because of but Rashi says the Shekhinah was the time, all the time, from the beginning to the end. V'aloi lo nistalko Shekhinah mimenu. The divine did not leave Mount Sinai. From when? Meyoy Matan Torah says Vayered Hashem ba'onon. God descended from the time that Hashem descended from Matan Torah ad echod b'chodesh. That was in the month of Sivan, right? And then Tishrei until the next month. They built the Mishkan on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. 9 months later, okay, this was Sivan, that it came down. Tammuz of Elul. Then you had Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevis, Shvat. Or 10 months later. And actually, after they built the Mishkan on the first day of Nisan, it stayed there for a whole month until the 20th of Iyar. Until the 20th of Iyar, in which the cloud went up. So he should have known that you're allowed to. You don't need the pasuk b'mshech hayovel hemayal bahar. He could have learned it that it's allowed, because once it's not mul harahu, and mul harahu, it was one continue. Why did the Torah have to say an allowance? Once you blow the shofar, they can go up. So that means to us, if the Eibishter said, don't go up, even the reason no longer applies, you can't go up until Hashem says you could go up. That's a minyan, something that a davar should be minyan, you need the other minyan to be matter. Rashi says, "Ubemesechta tainis nami mahukro yalfinon." Over there, we learn out from the pasuk of B'mshoich HaYovel, I guess. We learn out that it is permissible to go up on the mountain because the Torah says B'mshoich HaYovel. The Tanya, because we learn over there in the Beitzah. Rabbi Yossi says, Loi mikoymoi shel odom mechabdei. He says, it's not the place of a person that honors him. So that, if you go in an honorable place, then you are honored because you're in an honorable place. Allahu mechabed b'koymei. But you make the place honorable, which means what makes it's not the Sinai honored Hashem, but Hashem honored the Sinai. It's not the place of Sinai that honored Hashem to come there, but because Hashem came there, that's what honored Sinai. Shekol zman shashchina hoysa bahar, omra Torah. For as long as the vine was in the mountain, the Torah says, Gam hatzoin b'habokor al yiru. They should not be there. Nistalka shchina omra Torah. But once the shchina left, the Torah says, B'mshoich hayovel heimo yalu bahar. That when the yovel blows or stops, they should go over the hilkoch. So the question is, why did it have to say? So you see from that Gemara too that it is the pasuk of B'mshoich hayovel that allowed them to go up. So the question is, why did it have to say very specifically they should go up? Why wasn't it allowed on its own? The way we're deriving it, the Horahu says, as long as the mountain has the Shekhinah, you can't go up. What does that mean? That after the Shekhinah is no longer there, you can go up. Why do we need a pasuk to tell you that you can go up? That means, Shmamino, Tzarich Minach Chalatire. You need another head count to permit it, which means the Eibishter says you can't go up. He has to say you could get up, even though he already said you can only not go up for a certain amount of time. No, that's not good enough. He has to come back and say you can't go up. Shmamino, Davar shebeminyan tzarich minyan achal atirei. Something which you had counted on, and you need another count to permit it. It won't help that the reason has stopped. This was the argument that he said that even though they do accept the witnesses after mincha, it's still not going to allow you to eat the egg because the prohibition stays. Further, this is not, and there's a further proof that he's bringing with a different proofs, davar shebeminyan, because maybe your argument is going to be, okay, the Torah argues if Hashem prohibits something, we need Hashem to permit it. But who says that when the rabbis prohibit something, that you would also need the rabbis to permit it? Okay, it's different. You can't compare the rabbis to Hashem. So how would this be evidence for the rabbis? If you're going to say, okay, but the Torah, if the Torah said, don't go up, it's not enough that we can derive that it's over, but you need a special direction for the Torah. That's only the Torah. But with Rabbanon, but with the rabbis, no. Maybe if they made a decree because they found it because they would come late, so they can change it without having a new vote. But not by the Rabbanon, maybe. Hani mili b'deraisa. Zokt Rashi explains. The Isur sheyotza mipi hagmura. Yeah, I'm upstairs giving a shir now. Are you here for mincha? Somebody's down, came in. All right. So that's only b'deraisa. The Isur sheyotza mipi hagmura. That is when there's a prohibition that came out from Hashem. Hutzrachnu lishmoya heter mipiv. So then we need a special permission. Hashem said no. We need to have Hashem say yes, even though there's no longer the reason. But when you have a head count of the rabbis, we don't need a direct permission. No, take away that rule. But it's derivative, since it was only for the time. Once the time passes, once the reason is no longer there, then it becomes permissible. So that's why we bring the following proof from Toshma Kerem Revoy. Let us see by Kerem Revoy. And by Kerem Revoy, we said that he wanted to make it hefker because he didn't want to trouble himself to bring it up to Yerushalayim, and he was within a 1 day's walk to Yerushalayim, and that rule is the Rabbanan rule that if you're 1 day, don't exchange it for the money, but actually bring the fruit itself. And what did they tell him? No, you don't have to give it up, because there was already another count who said that you don't have to do it. So you see, even by the rabbis, you need a count. This that you require to bring the fruit himself. You can't exchange it for money and bring the money if you're within a walk of a days. The Rabbananu, that is from the rabbis. So you see, even when there is the decree of the rabbi, the kaboyi minyan, and he says there was a minyan, he's a minyan. Even though you can allow it just by deriving, and saying the whole reason why the rabbis wanted the fruits, because they want to adorn the fruits of Yerushalayim should be with beautiful fruits. But once Yerushalayim is destroyed, there's no point in bringing the beautiful fruits. So what's the point of bringing the fruits to Yerushalayim. So on its own, the decree should be off. There's no longer decree. But we don't say that. We need the Rabbana. That's what he says. Well, Kerem Revai the Rabbana. Kerem Revai is only the Rabbana. The Ka'amri lay. What were they saying to him? The rabbis were saying to him, the students were saying to him, to Rabbi Lozer, what were they saying to him? That there's already been a count to allow this. And therefore, they say to him, the students, the rabbis, your friends, the other rabbis, they made a head count and they permitted it. And therefore, it's allowed. Okay. So therefore, he says, that's his opinion. He says, no, it doesn't matter that we no longer go Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's takana, but that's what Rabbi Yosef said, that even after the takana of Yochanan ben Zakkai, the takana is not bottled because there was no minyan. They didn't count on it, so it stays with the Isser. Since there was an Isser before to eat the egg that was laid on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, that Isser stays, and we're not allowed to eat it. That's what he holds, Rabbi Yosef holds. So the Gemara says, but maybe how do I know that they didn't have a minyan? Maybe how could Rabbi Yochanan change the decree that they should accept the witnesses all the way to the end? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's reasoning was, since there is no more the Beitzah Hamikdash, so we're not going to make a mistake anymore about the song of the Levim, which brought about to this whole parsha in the first place, the whole problem in the first place. So he must have had a minyan to change the law of the Rabbanon. So just like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai changed the law that you should be able to accept the witnesses all day, there was no Beis Hamikdash, but they still were Mekadesh HaPiyariya. They were still doing by the moon, by the witnesses. So maybe there was also a count for the egg, that the egg v'chitema Beitzah nami imlu Allah. Rabbi Chaim ben Zakkai. Maybe Rabbi Chaim ben Zakkai also counted on that. They did a head count. They're shariu and they allowed it. V'chitem Beitzah nami chuzok Rashi. Has to hold Rabbi Yosef lasuki lemilsis, finishing up his statement. This whole piece was just to point that you need another minyan to be matrid. So Rabbi Yosef says, he said before, the af mitakonos Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai ve'elach, even after Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and on, Beitzah Asur, it's Osur. So he says, maybe they allowed that too. Why am I saying that it's Osur? So he says, Ki imnu ha'edus, ha'beitzah lo imnu. Their count was nothing to do. They didn't change the law of the egg because they didn't talk about the egg. They were only changing when to accept the witnesses. The egg is a consequence of that. We said that if they accept the edus only to mincha, then sometimes you would have both days Yom Tov because they would extend the Yom Tov for the next day. But it's not that the egg is alone. So the Gemara says they only counted edus, but the Beitzah lo yimla, they didn't count So the Beitzah is still osir, just like it was, because they didn't do a new count to say a Beitzah is mutter. But the Gemara challenges that. But the Beitzah was never in the count to make it osir in the first place. All what they were counting about, Abaye challenges him. The whole count was what? Was about when to accept the witnesses of the Chodesh. So he said that even Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai changed that. And he said what? That you can accept the witnesses till the end of the day. So there's no reason for Beis Din to making 2 days Kodesh. It's back to Sveika de Yoma, and therefore the Beitzah will be mutter. Otu Amalei Abaya. Otu Beitzah b'minyan mehavoi. Why would you even need a minyan to permit the Beitzah? The Beitzah was never part of counted on. The rabbis never counted to say that Beitzah is osur. Beitzah b'minyan mehavoi klum huskiru b'minyan harishon la'isra. Was it then mentioned in the first counting to say, oh, the egg that was laid on Rosh Hashanah, the first day is also in the second day? They didn't even talk about an egg. What did they talk about? They talked about not to accept the witnesses that come for the Chodesh after Mincha, and in that case, to continue that day as a holy day, even though Rosh Hashanah is going to be tomorrow. So, Beitzah Be'edus Tal Yemilsa. It's totally dependent on when we take the witnesses. Itzar Edus, once you say you can't do the Edus, Itzar Beya, Ishtari Edus, Ishtari Beitzah. If the Edus is permitted to take till the nighttime, so we no longer have the issue with making it an extra day Yontiv, so the egg is Mutter Memanav Shach. So basically they challenged Rabbi Yosef. So he says you didn't need, it's so strange the way the Gemara does it. We went through this whole thing, how something in a count needs another count to permit it. And at the end, he's saying here, the egg was never in the count in the first place. Yeah, and it wasn't even in the count. And therefore, there is no reason to make it us or not. That was.
But it's dependent on the count.
Yes, but it's not independent. So there was a count how Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai went later on, and he changed it to accepting the witnesses all the way till the nighttime. So there was a count for that. But otherwise, how did it change that? And for the egg, it didn't have to change because the egg is a consequence of when we accept the witnesses. So it's not a problem. So basically, Rabbi Yosef's contention was challenged over here. So that's in the Gemara. But Rav Adav and Rav Shalman, Tarvayu mibei Kluchis Amri. These two rabbis, they were from the place of Kluchis. They say no. Their argument is, right now we're assuming that if we go by Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who says that we can accept the witnesses till nighttime, so now it's never 2 day yontiv. They say no. Af mitakonas Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai ve'elach Beitzah asura, the egg would still be awesome for another reason. My timer. They say like this: Meheira yibone Beis Hamikdash. Very soon the Beis Hamikdash will be built. So what's going to be when the Beis Hamikdash is going to be built? Betachzer takona rishono shaloi lekabel eidus el ad mincha. And the original takona not to accept the eidus till mincha, because now we're going to have a problem again with the shir shel yom. Yeah, and they're not making an allowance for the nuance of technology that we'll be able to find out quicker and things like that. But in any event, um, the original takona not to accept the witnesses till mincha is going to come back because we have the same issue why we had this in the first place, and therefore, and the yemru, and what are the people going to say? So at that point, is the egg going to be permitted that was laid the first day of Rosh Hashanah? No, because then it becomes a Yom Arichta again. It becomes one long day, and the egg from the first day of Rosh Hashanah that was laid cannot be eaten the second day. But the people, now that the Beis Hamikdash is built, they're going to say, Ishtakad mi lo yachalnu Beitzah b'yom tev sheni? Last year, did we not eat the egg that was laid on the first day Yom Tov the second day? Hashtanami nechel. Let us eat now too. But v'layadi, they're not going to know the shtakat shtei kedushas say. Last year it was two kedushas. Why? Because then there was no Beis Hamikdash, and then they would accept the edus till at nighttime. So there was uh, no one kedusha. It was two kedushas. But v'hashta kedusha achasein, because they make the Beis Din instituted to make the kedusha. So now we're not allowed to eat it, and they're going to make a mistake. They're not going to know it. Okay, so he says, I don't want to change it because if you change it, you may not be able to change it back. When you change it back, you're not going to be able to change the loch of the egg back because you're going to see, let's do it like we did it last year, and now the circumstances are different. Frag the Gemara, if that's the logic, so how could Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai then change that we should accept the witnesses till the nighttime? Because after the Beis Hamikdash will be built, they'll make a mistake. They said over there, last year we accepted the witnesses till the nighttime, and now they're not going to know that now is the Beis Hamikdash was built already, so we can't take it because we're going to have a problem with the Shir Shel Yom by Mincha. So let us not even accept the witnesses either. Why? For the same logic. My time. Reason Meheru Yibana Beis Hamikdash. Beis Hamikdash will be built. V'yoimru, and the people will say, "Yishtaken mi lo kibal meidus kol yom kuloi hashtanami na lekadam the kabel." Just like last year, we accepted the witnesses all day. Let us accept it now too. So how could Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai change the law for accepting the Eidos, not worried about that Meheru Yibana Beis Hamikdash, and it's going to go back and make a mistake, and we do have to worry. And the Gemara says, well, there's a big difference. Because receiving the Eidos is done by Bezdin. They're not going to make a mistake. They're going to know. It's different. Last year, there was no Beis Hamikdash, no worries. So there was not 2 days. And now, because the Beis Hamikdash is back, it became Yom Arichta again. But an ordinary person eating an egg, he's not going to know the difference. The Gemara says, how could you compare this? Hasam Eidus Mesura LeBezdin. Eidus is given over to the Bezdin to take care of Mesura LeBezdin. Who's the one that deals with Eidus? Bezdin. They know the reasoning that why the previous year they didn't why the previous year they accepted the witnesses till the nighttime was because there was no Beis Hamikdash, and now this is the Beis Hamikdash. There's a problem, so we accept them earlier. So there's no reason. We don't have to worry about the previous year that is going to go back to the old ways. They're not going to make a mistake. They know that Beitzah l'kol mesura, but the egg is given over to ordinary people. The kol mesura liyad kol hiba. This comes to everybody. Not everybody's going to come and ask the Rav, can I eat or not? Some they will rely on their tradition. Last year we ate it, we're going to eat it again. So therefore, the egg stays usr because it might go back, it might become usr in the future years, and people got used to it, so we're not going to allow it. That was the reason of these two rabbis, Rabbi Ada and Rabbi Shammai. And Rava gives another reason that it's asur. Rava comes up with another original reason. He says that even though Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai allowed for the witnesses to come at nighttime, but he didn't change the rule that the day is kept kodesh if they came after mincha. He still keeps 2 days. Rava Omar, af mitakonos Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai ve'elach. Even after the Kon Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who says we accept the witnesses all day, Beitzah Asura, the egg is still going to be asur on the second day. Why? Mila Meid Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is not agree Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. She'im bo'u eidim min mincha l'maylo. If the eidim came after mincha, so even though when it's going to be Rosh Chodesh, it's going to start from mincha from that day, but shenogin eisa yom kodesh l'machar kodesh, that the next day, the second day is going to be, even though we know not, this is even a lot stronger than before, because he's saying you're going to make the second day Yom Tov, even though we know the first day is Yom Tov. Af al milay moed. Af al gav de tiken lekabel edus achodesh kol hayoyim. Even though he instituted that we're going to accept the witnesses of the month the entire days, that we start counting the holidays from the first day. We're still going to accept them to count Rosh Hashanah from the first days. But not to do a second day Yom Tov, it has not been uprooted, the original takona. If witnesses come after Mincha, we have 2 days Yom Tov. This is a tremendous chiddush, even more than before. Even though now we know that it's the first day, yet we're going to keep the second day Yom Tov. And the Gemara says, "V'omar Rava, hilchsik avos de Rav b'hanitlas." The aloha remains like Rav in all these 3 cases. What are the 3 cases? From one Yom Tov to the other Yom Tov, Rav is Mekel. He says that it's okay. That's Lakula. And also that from the first day Yom Tov to the second day Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Tov and Shabbos next to each other, he said that it's Asur. So we go L'chumra. In all the cases that we had before, the Gemara brought down Rav. In the different cases, we're always going to go like Rav, whether it's L'chumra or it's L'kula. Okay, this is the piece of Gemara here. Now,
What was Rav's
what?
What was his opinion?
We talked about 3 cases.
Right.
One case is 2 days Yom Tov.
Right.
Then the egg was laid on one is allowed to be eaten the second day. Then we have a case of 2 days Rosh Hashanah. Rav says, L'chumra, no, you can't. Also, for Shabbos after Yom Tov, a Yom Tov after Shabbos, Rav said before also that you can't, that it's also. And the halach is like Rav in all these 3 cases. That Yom Tov, Shabbos, Shabbos, Yom Tov, it's Asur. 2 days Rosh Hashanah, it's Asur. And 2 days Yom Tov, it's Moter.
Okay.
Amar Rava. So let's do another piece of Gemara here. It says Rava, Meis b'Yom Tov Rishon. If a person dies during the first day Yom Tov, so normally the occupying with a mace entails some violation, but we have to cover the mace, the honor of the mace, so we don't want him to stay. So if he dies during the first day Yom Tov, Yisasku boyamomim. So we have non-Jews, bury him, take care of him. Omarova Meis B'Yom Tov Rishon Chulu. Meis Amutu Ligber. There's a mace who's lying to bury. Im Yom Tov Rishon Hu Chulu. If it's the first day Yom Tov, then let non-Jews deal with it. Meis B'Yom Tov Sheni. But if it's second day Yom Tov, even though it's Mukha, there's prohibitions involved with Rabbanon, but the Kavod HaMes overrides because it's Yom Tov Sheni. It's not really Yom Tov. We know Yisasku by Yisrael. So then Jewish people can actually take care of him. It's a leniency that for the second day Yom Tov, Va'afilu b'shnei yomim tovim shel Rosh Hashanah, even the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, because for this, the covet of the mace, you're allowed to. Mashenkim bebeitzah, as opposed to by the egg, Mashenkim bebeitzah. So Rashi, le'inyan beitzah lo yikilu b'yom tov sheni, which with regards to Abeya, so they did not make it lenient on the second day, Yom Tov Shein Rosh Hashanah, on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. See, Shein Yom Tov Rosh Hashanah, it's only for the mace. But egg, they did not make lenient Shein Rosh Hashanah, Lash Voice Lishel Golus, to make it equal to Goliath, in other words, that you can eat it the next day. The Ilu, Rosh Hashanah, Neildu Bazeh, Asur Bazeh. So the only allowance, egg that was laid, like we learned before, is for a mace, but not for the egg. The egg, we have still the Chumrah from one Rosh Hashanah to the next day Rosh Hashanah, it's still Asur. It's Yom HaRichta, it's Asur. And Nardoi Amri Av Beitzah, they disagree. They say also by the egg you're allowed to. If it was laid in one day Rosh Hashanah, you can do, let's say, second day Rosh Hashanah. He says, the Mai Daitach. What is your worry? Le'asra b'sheni l'rechokim mibezdin. Why are you going to prohibit it on the second day Yom Tov to those who are far away from Beis Din? So what is the worry? Dilmo ma'avri le'elul. Maybe they're going to make Elul 30 days, so that Rosh Hashanah is the next day. So Elul is not going to be 29 days. Elul is going to be 30 days. So Rosh Hashanah is going to be the 31st day, the first day of the month. Limnois Miyom Sheni. That is like the first takona before Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai originally, that Yom Tov is the second day because we didn't accept the witnesses, so we start from the second day. Belasi Shnei Yomim, and you do 2 days. Kigoin Shaloi Bo Ad Yom Shloishi Be'echad. In the case all right, I see I'm struggling over here. So let's leave this over here for today. We'll start from Nahardoi next week in Mr. Shem, and we'll go through from there. We'll mamshach over there. In the meantime, everybody have a nice week, and thank you for joining me.
Thank
Same
you,
time,
Rabbi.
same station next week.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you for joining. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Great week.